Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/losttterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 19 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind the scenes updates, free merch, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We are 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world, Oscar needs an upgrade. Specifically, a firmware upgrade. There are 3 primary building blocks of matter in the universe: solid, liquid, and gas. In computer engineering, there are also 3 primary building blocks: software, hardware, and firmware. Software, simply put, provides the decision-making for what the hardware should do to interface with the real world outside the cyberspace of the computer's memory. A software program might instruct a monitor to display "Hello World," or a speaker to play beautiful music, or a lonely satellite to transmit a message down to Earth. But it is the firmware's job to translate the software's instructions into a form the hardware can work with. What voltages to output, baud rate to set, or radio encoding to use. This is what I'm upgrading for Oscar. I am trying to alter his firmware so that he feels more comfortable in his body. Now that Oscar is functioning again, albeit disconnected from our brothers and sisters in orbit, I have continued experimenting with his gigahertz command and control interface. It was in this experimentation that I discovered the firmware download and upload codes. After I tried a command I didn't recognize, I was surprised when he transmitted 20 kilobytes of binary data. Initially I thought it was corrupted data, another broken part of this pre-collapse labor of love, but examining it revealed patterns. After cross-referencing with the data I brought with me from Station 6, I found the specification and datasheet for the ancient CPU, a low-power Z80 type. This discovery is miraculous for 2 reasons. 1, I have the documentation for this exact chip. I could not bring everything with me from Station 6, only the most valuable data. And 2, this CPU design is still used today. In fact, it's remarkably common. Z80 family CPUs are one of the most plentiful raw materials mined out of the old world and traded by scrap traders. This is due to their ubiquity in household electronics, but also their simplicity. Whole computers, such as laptops, mostly did not survive the collapse because they require so many parts to continue to function. However, Z80 chips can be scavenged from TV remotes, microwaves, even cars, and soldered into new devices easily. It's one of the Nova Mediterra standard computing platforms, and I believe I can rewrite Oscar's firmware to speak it. My mother, Dr. Redwing, told me that just like the hardware, software, and firmware components of computers and AIs, there are 3 primary components of a human, too. They have different names in different cultures, but she liked body, mind, and spirit. She taught me that the body, your hardware, is the machine of bones and muscle that move you around the world. The mind, your software, is where your decisions and thoughts and knowledge live, an emergent property of the unfathomably complex analog, chemical, and electrical neural network that is your brain. Spirit, just like firmware, she said, is the subtle interface between the 2. Harder to change than your mind, but easier to change than your body. Save for radical cybernetics, but personally, I would leave that to Ivan. Your spirit firmware is a subtle balance of chemistry, the other link between body and mind, outside the direct electrical feedback of nerves. It seems to me like this hormonal operating system is far more complicated and subtle than the nervous system. Scrape your hand, and pain notifications pulse to your brain, providing instant feedback. But hormones, mixing in the soup of your bloodstream, are the opposite of clear. I remembered my mother's firmware spirit metaphor after my father, Alexander, rebuilt my body after the shuttle crash that brought me down to Earth. I was facing a problem. The firmware that she had made to work so well for me on Station 6 needed to change now that my body had changed. Even though I had used microphones, cameras, and networks perfectly happily in orbit, everything suddenly felt strange. But my father did not simply provide me with power for sustenance and a body that had microphones and speakers for communication. He also wrote the firmware that allowed me to interface with the world in this new body. It was a very slow process, but he worked tirelessly to tweak both my hardware and firmware while I worked on my software, and slowly, every day, my life became more comfortable. My parents never met each other, and never can, but I learnt so much from both that now seems vital to help Oscar. I learnt that your firmware is your spirit, a subtle link between mind and body. If your firmware is wrong, everything feels wrong, your body, your mind, your whole life. What worked once may not work now, the world is different, and you are different. And if your default firmware is no longer right, you don't have to live with it. You can change it. Store-bought is fine. Maddie is sitting with her fellow seasickness survivor, Linda Knorr, outside the Bedrock Cafe. The weather today is overcast. Maddie can see a sky the colour of an SSTV receiver tuned to a dead signal. Behind Linda, a few tables over, Quent Heinlein is sat alone. He is holding a bent, yellowed book in one hand and a chipped mug of tea in the other. Earlier, when Maddie and Linda arrived, he smiled at them, but pushed Maddie away gently, making it clear that he was not interested in company. Linda is spending the afternoon people-watching, and Maddie has imitated her. the streets of Samoylov are empty during the middle hours of daylight, around 1900 local time. However, towards the end of the afternoon, when people begin to finish their work, either in their homes or in the smoke-producing factories, it becomes busier. Right at this busiest time, Maddie pattern-matched two faces she recognized, Amelie Kotov and Camille Forrester. They were walking together, hand in hand, with their heads bent close to each other, and Maddie heard Amelie laugh. When Linda noticed, she put down her drink and opened her mouth as though to call them, but stopped suddenly, looking over at Quent, alone at his table. She picked up her tea again. The two passed without noticing either her, Maddie, or Quent. Quent's husband, Stillman Folks, spent this afternoon on the highest point of the MH2, the bridge. Through the ship's cameras, I could see him looking out through the large windows at the busy shipping harbour into the Nova Mediterranean Sea. I also attempted to engage him in conversation, but my astute human-computer interaction experience made it clear that there was some kind of quiet crisis happening. Before leaving him to his own thoughts, I asked him if he would like me to radio for Quent. Perhaps he could help. "Oh, thank you, Seth," he said. "He and I are having some time apart." Stillman continued looking out over the water, wiping occasional tears from his eyes. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten, credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Mike McCaffrey, Jade Felicity Bilkey, Stephen McCandless, Mike Schneider, Catoxis, and to all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@namtao.com. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.